Hey everybody, Steve Ritter, back again for Smoothie and Story. So I'm kind of continuing on the theme. A lot of people have asked about some of my Air Force stories, some of my flying stories, and um, that's the thing about flying cargo airplanes. The flying itself, unless but there are some pretty exciting things flying airdrop and low levels and all that. Flying in a 400,000 pound airplane 500 feet off the ground at 300 miles an hour is that's pretty exciting. That'll wake you up in the morning. So it's not quite like the dogfighting like fighters, but I mean we did a lot of cool stuff. For me, the coolest part overall in general was just all the cool places you got to go and see all over the world. Been to most everywhere. I haven't ever been to Australia or Antarctica, but about every other continent I've been to. Anyway, I'm going to talk today a little bit about Diego Garcia, the jewel of the Indian Ocean. Well, maybe not, but anyway, today's smoothie I'm going to go with. Found a nice kiwi, so I got 2 kiwis and about 8 frozen strawberries. So I'm expecting a little bit more thicker, cooler consistency, shake-like. And then I got my regular old Laban here, full fat Laban, which is like kefir. And I'm gonna throw it in the blender and have my not gonna mess with any peanut butter today. I don't want to throw I'm kind of excited about this flavor. I saw the kiwis in the grocery store the other day. It's like, strawberry kiwi. I do like that drink. About 2 to 3 cups of this kefir Laban here, and throw it in the blender. And through the magic of editing, we'll get Raul hit it. We'll go ahead and start up the blender. Sounds good. Get my trusty glass here. Let's try this out. I think I got all the big chunks ground up, I hope. Looks good. Color's nice. Strawberry, of course. Yeah, it really doesn't cut the tang from the Laban though, or kefir if you use kefir. It doesn't cut the tang of it. Still got that the tang from it. So it's not real sweet, but it's refreshing. And of course, I like the cold. That's tasty. All right, let's go have a chat. So, I talked the last time we talked about the my mission evaluation that I had, and that was one of the missions I flew down to. So it was probably, we started doing these in like let me fix this real quick here. In 1997, we started doing something called the PSIDs. Excuse me. So Pacific Strategic Intra-Theater Deployment. So basically we constantly had airplanes flying around Pacific, bringing cargo around all the different places, and one of our big customers out there obviously was the Navy. So you had the PSID in the Pacific and the ESID, the European Strategic Intra-Theater Deployment, out there, and it was like a constant rotation. So the ESIDs were always good deals. I mean, the days were a little shorter. You didn't get as many hours on flights, but you're in Europe, and the summer ESIDs were like the gold ring, and we always joked about that. The A team always got that, and I never could get on. I never went on one. Never could get on one. Just between all my schools and everything else, it just never worked out. But PSIDs, it seemed like that's all I did, which I was fine with. because you got to have a certain number of hours to upgrade to aircraft commander. And I was already behind. I was late rated. I spent my first 3 years in the Air Force as a maintenance officer, and then went to pilot training. So I showed up to my first base as a co-pilot, as a captain, never having flown another airplane. So I had some ground to make up quick, and I didn't mind going on the PSIDs at all. Well, the PSID we'd go from California, we'd fly over, we'd refuel and then fly to Korea, then Japan. And the PSID started in Japan. So we'd leave out of Yokota Air Base right outside of Tokyo, and we'd fly down the coast. It was kind of cool because on the way down, we would talk with Vietnam. We'd talk with Hanoi. And I think we'd actually talk with, I think it was Ho Chi Minh Center. We would talk with, excuse me, and it was always the first time I heard that, it kind of freaked me out a little bit because it sounded like they were talking from a bunker somewhere or something. But Ho Chi Minh, we'd talk with them, flying down the coast. We'd fly all the way down off the coast of China, Vietnam, and we kind of cut around the corner. And most times we went to Singapore, and we'd land in Singapore at their air base there, and I can't remember the name of the air base. They had C-130s there, which was like the nicest looking C-130s you'd ever seen. I mean, I don't know that they ever even flew them. They just look nice. But it's like the guy that's in the driveway that's always polishing his car, but you never see him drive it. That was kind of that. Their C-130s, real shiny, real nice. Never saw them flying. Anyway, we'd land there, and it was a gas and go. So we'd gas up, go in, follow our next flight plan, come back out, check the weather and everything else, and then off we go. And but I always liked Singapore. I never had to spend the night there. They always talked about it because that was the time this was like in 97, 98, story about that teenage boy that got caned for vandalizing cars, and they caned him, the U.S. boy. And the rumor was, hey, you can get caned for throwing your chewing gum on the ground and all this kind of crazy stuff. So we're always kind of like, well, be careful, watch yourself here in Singapore. And but there was a place, they had a giant mango tree there. And as you went in where we followed the flight plan, the base ops area, you came out and there was like a giant mango tree there, and there was a restaurant underneath. And it was called the Mango Tree. We'd go in there, and you could get fried rice, like Thai fried rice, and they'd make it up, put it in a to-go carton for you. And we'd, hey, anybody want, everybody knew that, go to the Mango Tree and get the fried rice. And anybody, well, yeah, get me, the guys that had to stay out at the airplane to work, and we'd, get their order, and we'd go get the fried rice and bring it out to them, and that's what you'd have to eat. So from Yokota to Singapore was about 6.5 to 7 hour flight. So we'd fly all the way around. You hear that? So that's time. That's the call to prayer. So like I said, I got like 5 mosques right out behind my hotel here. This guy's got some golden pipes. He sings pretty good. Let me take it up close to the window so you can hear. That's where it's coming from. You could hear it coming from the other mosque too. That's the view out of my hotel. This is like a giant residential block here. I hope you can hear that. That's kind of cool. Anyway, Yeah, so about 7 hours down to Singapore, then we'd gas up, spend usually 2 3 hours on the ground, and then it was another 5 hours to Diego Garcia. Now Diego Garcia, we'd fly west, fly past Indonesia, and then fly out to Diego, and it's out in the middle of the Indian Ocean. So if you look at India, it kind of comes to a point. So directly, like south of that is kind of where Diego Garcia is. It's probably about 4 hours flight south of India, something like that. Maybe not that far, 2 to 3 probably. But it's out in the middle of nowhere. It's a coral atoll is what it is. So it's just over the years it's built up and palm trees there, and it was an old. It's part of the it's the Biot, the British Indian Ocean Territory. So the Brits own it, and they have a base there. And years ago, probably early '70s, the U.S. paid the Navy has a base there now, and they keep it's like replenishment ships, anchor there, strategic stockpile stuff like that. But there's an air base there, and we would fly in and bring supplies in, and then from there we would fly northwest up to the UAE. We'd actually to Fujairah, and that's where we go, and then back to Diego, and then back the way we came back up to Yokota. That was the PSIT. That was the same route. Most of the time we went to the same place. Sometimes you get to go to, like I mentioned last time, I went down to Jakarta in Indonesia. That's the only time I've ever been there. And then there was one time we stopped in Utapao, Thailand, and stopped there. But Diego was a cool place because there's a lot of travel lists, like there's little like bucket list places to travel all over the world, and Diego was actually a big check mark for those lists, people that like to travel and go everywhere, and because it's so hard to get there because it's basically a military island. And you can't just travel there, commercially or anything. There's no commercial flights or anything that go in there. So it's like if you can get there and get that check mark. So if I ever decide to do that travel challenge, maybe I'll win, right? Maybe. So, but there's a long area, but it's like a giant, U-shaped atoll. And the air base is on the southwest side of it, I guess. And there's an opening there where ships can come in and anchor, and it's a kind of a deep water port in there. Weather's real mild there. There's no real weather at all out there, so the first time I went there, I was like, man, this place is cool, and it is really cool for about 2 days, because that's how long it takes you to see everything there, and that's all there is. And there's a little bit of a beach on the inside, and they have like a little club there, like a little beach club. So there's the U.S. Navy base there, and then there's a lot of contract workers that work there. They bring in a lot of Filipinos and folks that they bring in, and they have a village that they live in and work there and all that, and they rotate through and they stay there. It's like that's a job for them. They're there for a year or two or however long they're there. Yeah, and the only stuff they get is stuff that, like, when we fly in and we bring in, or a ship comes in or something like that. So when you get there, they had a chow hall we ate at. And that's the funny thing is and they would have like a little shopette or something you could buy stuff. So I went in. I remember going, and the story is when they would put stuff on the shelf to sell until it sold. So if it didn't sell, there it sat until somebody bought it, because you never can't tell when the next. So a shipment of like Pepsi will come in, and it'll sit back in the back till space opens on the shelf, and then they'll replace it. So if nobody bought it, then it would just, the other stuff would sit back there and it would just be a death spiral of expired stuff back there. I think that's how it went, because I bought a Pepsi one time, and I'm looking at it, and I'm going, wow, this can's kind of. And I look up at the bottom of the expiration date. It had expired like a year ago, and I'm like, going, what? I'm like, I'd already paid for it, walked out. So I'm like, so I opened it up, and normally you get the air. I've never heard a can where you open it up and the air goes, and it sucks in. And I'm like going, man, I don't know what's in there, man. There's some kind of self-aware sentient being that lives in that thing or something. No, get this thing out of here. Get rid of it. But we had we stayed there one time. Now, if you were smart, nobody swam outside the. There you had the Coral Atoll. You had the outside with the open ocean, and then you had the inside, and so people would swim and snorkel and stuff on the inside, but there were signs up everywhere like don't swim out here, shark infested waters, and anything that's infested I don't go near, right? So Arlene laughs at me all the time because she thinks I'm deathly afraid of sharks. I am. Yeah, I don't like sharks. So I think it was Jaws. I think that's what caused it. Anyway, yeah, the one time we coordinated, we landed and had enough time that we could took a water safety class. So they had a bunch of Mako power boats there. You could take those out and drive around you could take them out and rent them. And we got together as a crew and did that one time and drove around. That was pretty fun. And then I had a neighbor who would go on there on a trip. Well, you could also, if you're there long enough, could work it. And if the boat wasn't broken, you could pay, and they'd take you out fishing outside, on the outside where the big fish are. Well, he got out there and latched onto something huge, got a big marlin. I mean, like hundreds of pounds marlin, and got a hold of this thing, and it was so big. Well, he said he was fighting it, and then it just kind of was dead weight, and he's reeling and reeling, and pulled it up, and it had died, and a shark had come. And he said that the thing had taken a bite out of the back of the tail like that. It was just a giant tiger shark or something that took a big bite out of it and killed it. And so they had to tie that thing up to the boat and tow it in. It was too big. So they bring it in. He had pictures of it. And they pulled it in, and then they had this little tractor. They had to back up on the beach and pull it up out of the water to get it up on the pulleys up there. And he had a picture of it. Well, anyway. He said that what they would do if you caught something that big, obviously how are you going to bring all that back? Nobody had a cooler or anything else. You could take it to the club, to the O Club, and they would fillet it up for you, and you'd take those big steaks in, and they would cook you a meal fit for a king. I mean, they would cook it up for you for free, and then they would make you one for the next day, and then they got to keep the rest. And then of course they would offer it up, whatever. So that was the deal. Unless you had enough foresight to bring not only a cooler but also dry ice and a way to keep it cool. So most people didn't do that. Obviously, nobody did that. So, but he brought the tail. He was my neighbor at the time in Charleston. He brought that tail home, and he actually kept it, and he was keeping it out there. His wife made him keep it outside because it was. Until he killed the smell. He was packing it full of borax and everything else, trying to kill the smell. But the tail was like probably 3 foot wide, and the stub where it cut it off, but the tail, I mean, it was huge. And it was this tail, So anyway, that's Diego. Not much to see there, but it's kind of cool to fly in there and see that part of the world. But there were coconuts. It used to be there was on the other side. There was a coconut plantation, and there were wild donkeys over there from the days of the coconut plantation. But they had used that. That's what that was originally. Was just a coconut plantation, and then I guess the British figured out that well, hey, we've got a base right out in the middle here. The Indian Ocean's pretty strategic, and they held on to it. So it was kind of cool. But anyway, that's about all I can think of about Diego. They have a golf course there. It's 9 holes, terrible golf course. But you got to play it. And then there was a little jogging trail through the woods. You could go mountain biking through the woods. Not much there. Coconuts everywhere. You'd walk out in the woods there and you hear thump behind you, and you're scary. but it's just coconuts dropping off the trees. And they were all over the ground, and they had crabs everywhere, the coconut crabs that would come. But you could see the coconuts, a lot of them split open, and the roots growing down into the ground, growing up, you know. There was coconuts everywhere. You'd see them sometimes floating in the ocean. Some of them got fallen off and gotten in the water. That was cool. That's how the coconuts spread all around. It's pretty cool. And we'd go out there and pick some and try to open them, and you could. I mean, you dig them out of the big heavy seeds, like the big grain pods that they're in, and they dry, and you got to open those up, and inside's the coconut, and you could hear it. You could slosh it back more. You hear the coconut water inside there. You're breaking it open and eating the coconut and all, which Anyway, it that was pretty cool. So that's about all I can think of with Diego. Good time. We did lose the one of the scariest things. We were taken off out of there one time, and we'd had a problem with our engine, the electronic engine control, and there's two channels, two electrical channels and one of them was bad, and then when we were taken off, the other one failed, and if you lose that, the engine flames out. So we took off and lost an engine. And of course we trained for that all the time, and it was like, oh, look at that, engine failed, and we climbed up and to safe altitude, and then we're like, yeah, hey, we're gonna just turn around, come back and land, and turn around and came back and landed. No big deal. That's what we trained for. And the engines, we don't take off unless you can take off safely if you lose an engine to continue the takeoff. We don't take off unless you could do that. So. So that was like the biggest emergency I ever had, I think, was losing that engine, and it was just a non-issue really. So anyway, that's all I got for Diego. Hope you enjoyed the stories, and this smoothie's pretty good. So strawberry kiwi and Diego, and then you got a little bit of culture with the call to prayer there. That was kind of cool hearing that. So hope you could hear it. Anyway, Steve Ritter signing off, Colonel signing off, saying see you next time.